Okay, so you want to become an NBA referee, spend a decade working gyms nobody has heard of, get screamed at by grown men in suits every single night, and hope that somewhere around year 10, the league finally lets you stand on an NBA court. Sounds miserable. It kind of is. And the story of how referees actually get paid, and how their careers actually rise or fall, is one of the strangest hidden economies in professional sports. Before you make a single dollar, you have to survive getting noticed at all. There is no draft for referees, no agent calling teams on your behalf. The path usually starts in youth leagues or high school gyms, then moves to college basketball, and for most modern officials, a stop in the NBA's own G League, where the league develops and evaluates young referees the same way it develops young players. Officials in that pipeline get watched, graded, and re-evaluated constantly, sometimes for close to a decade before the NBA ever offers them a full-time contract. By the time a new referee steps onto an NBA floor for the first time, they have usually already worked thousands of lower-level games for a fraction of NBA money, often barely enough to cover the travel involved in chasing the job in the first place. Once you're in, the pay structure looks nothing like what most fans imagine. The NBA does not publish referee salaries the way it publishes player contracts. So most of what's known comes from the referee's own union and from reporting built on those numbers, but the general shape is consistent across sources. A brand new staff referee starts out somewhere in the range of $75,000 to $250,000 a year, often supplemented by a per-game fee of a few $100s. That is the entry tier, the rookie contract of officiating, except there is no signing bonus and no guaranteed roster spot waiting at the end of it. Referees with 3 to 5 years of experience move into the middle tier, where base pay climbs toward the $300,000 to $500,000 range, with per-game fees rising into the thousands. At the very top sit veteran crew chiefs, the officials trusted with the biggest rivalries and the tightest games, who can earn anywhere from $500,000 to over $500,000 a year in base pay alone, with the most senior names reportedly clearing 6 figures in bonuses on top of that. Compare that to the players they're standing next to. Even the lowest paid rookie on an NBA roster earns close to $1 million a year under the league's minimum salary rules. The person with the whistle, the one empowered to overturn a play with a single call, is often making a fraction of what the least experienced player on the floor takes home. Here is where the layered part of the business starts to matter. Because base salary is only the first income stream, and it is not the one that actually separates a comfortable officiating career from a great one. The second layer is the regular season per game fee, which can run anywhere from around $600 for a rookie to several $1,000s for a veteran crew chief, depending on experience and grade. The third and by far the most consequential layer is the postseason. Playoff assignments are not handed out by seniority alone. They are earned through a grading system, and only a fraction of the league staff, usually somewhere around 36 officials, actually work playoff games in a given year. Those who make the cut can earn several $1,000s per game in the early rounds. Climbing toward the conference finals. Make it all the way to the NBA Finals, one of the most exclusive assignments in the sport, and a single game can pay somewhere in the range of $20,000 to $50,000. Work all 7 possible finals games in a single postseason, and that stretch alone can add up to more than a referee's entire base salary for the year. This is the mechanism that quietly drives the entire profession. The regular season pays the bills. The playoffs are where a referee actually builds wealth, and getting there is not automatic. It has to be earned one graded call at a time. Watch a broadcast, and you will usually notice 3 people in gray and black moving around the court, but a modern NBA crew technically includes a 4th participant nobody in the arena ever actually sees. Every game is also connected to the league's replay center in Secaucus, New Jersey, a control room staffed by additional officials who can rule on certain replay situations, like whether a shot beat the clock or which team last touched a ball headed out of bounds, without the crew chief ever leaving the scorer's table. The 3 officials on the floor still carry the title structure the league adopted decades ago: crew chief, referee, and umpire, with the crew chief holding final authority on court. But since 2015, an increasing share of close decisions get kicked upstairs to Secaucus instead, which means part of officiating a modern NBA game now happens in a building none of the fans watching in the arena will ever set foot in. Underneath the game fees sits a layer of benefits most fans never think about. Every referee on the NBA staff, regardless of tier, gets health insurance, travel allowances that cover flights and hotels for a schedule that keeps them away from home more nights than not, and contributions into a pension plan that keeps paying out long after the whistle stops. Referees working the WNBA, by comparison, earn closer to $400 a game at the entry level, a reminder that the gap in officiating pay between leagues tracks the gap in those leagues' own television and ticket revenue almost exactly. That grading system is worth pausing on, because it is unlike almost anything in professional sports. Every single call a referee makes during the regular season gets reviewed internally by the league's officiating department, and referees are given performance scores based on accuracy. Since 2015, some of that grading has become public through something called the Last 2-Minute Report, a document the league releases after every game that finishes within 3 points in its final 2 minutes, breaking down every whistle and every notable non-call from that stretch and rating it correct or incorrect. League officials have said that referees get calls right somewhere around 90% of the time across a full season, but the Last 2-Minute Report puts individual missed calls under a public microscope the very next morning, with a referee's name attached. No other major sport publishes anything close to this level of individual accountability for its officials in near real time. A referee can work a flawless game for 46 minutes and still wake up the next day being dissected online because of one call in the final 90 seconds. That public grade, stacked on top of the private internal grade the league already keeps, is what eventually decides who gets a playoff assignment and who spends another spring watching from home. The costs of this job rarely show up in a highlight reel, but they are real, and they start with the calendar. A full-time referee typically works somewhere close to 65 to 70 regular season games, spread across a schedule that has them flying into a different city almost every other night, running full speed up and down a court with players half their age, and doing it without a single substitution the entire game. There is no bench for a referee. If a crew chief pulls a hamstring in the second quarter, the game does not stop for long. Someone else on the crew simply absorbs more responsibility. Beyond the physical toll, there is the psychological one. A missed call in a game with money on the line. And increasingly there is money on the line, given how large sports betting has grown, does not just draw boos from the crowd, it can trigger league fines, official reprimands, and a permanent mark on a referee's evaluation file. Which brings up the darkest chapter in this entire industry, because officiating in professional sports carries a risk that almost no other job on the court or field carries, the risk of being bribed. In 2007, longtime NBA referee Tim Donaghy was caught passing inside information to gamblers, including details on which games he would be officiating and insight into player conditions, in exchange for cash payoffs. He eventually pleaded guilty to federal charges of conspiracy and transmitting wagering information, and in 2008, he was sentenced to 15 months in federal prison. The financial damage from the scandal was measured in the low hundreds of thousands of dollars in restitution. But the reputational damage to the entire officiating corps was far larger and lasted for years. In the aftermath, the league overhauled how it monitors referees financially, expanding background checks, requiring far more detailed disclosure of assets and associations, and building out the kind of integrity monitoring systems that are now standard across professional sports. That monitoring has only gotten heavier since, because the legalization of sports betting across most of the United States starting in 2018 means far more money is riding on the calls a referee makes on any given night than ever before. A referee today is not just being watched by fans and coaches, they are being watched by the league's own integrity office, by outside data firms that flag unusual betting patterns, and by a public that now has direct financial reasons to scrutinize every whistle. The referees are not powerless in all of this, though, and their own labor history proves it. Officials in the NBA are represented by a union, the National Basketball Referees Association. And in 2009, that union found itself locked out by the league during a contract dispute, with replacement officials from lower-level leagues brought in to work preseason games while the two sides negotiated. The lockout lasted through the preseason before a new 2-year agreement was reached just in time for the regular season to open on schedule. A reminder that even with only around 60 full-time positions in the entire NBA, the people who hold them have enough leverage to shut the pipeline down if they choose to. So does becoming an NBA referee actually pay off as a career? The honest answer depends entirely on how far up the ladder you climb, and the gap between the bottom and the top of that ladder is enormous. In the optimistic scenario, you spend a decade grinding through youth leagues, college gyms, and the G League, get noticed, join the NBA staff, keep your accuracy grade high enough to avoid the wrong side of a last 2-minute report, and within 5 years you're working playoff basketball every spring. From there, base salary, playoff fees, and eventually finals assignments turn a solid 6-figure job into something closer to $500,000 a year or more, with a pension and full benefits waiting at the other end of a long career. In the realistic hard scenario, you make the staff, but a handful of high-profile missed calls follow you into every off-season evaluation. Your grade stays average, and you spend years working only regular season games while younger officials with cleaner recent grades leapfrog you into the postseason rotation that actually pays. Neither outcome is rare. Both happen constantly within the same 60-person staff, sometimes to the same referee only a few seasons apart. A referee's whistle looks, from the stands, like a simple tool for stopping and starting the game. From the inside, it's actually a running scorecard on that person's entire career, tracked call by call, game by game, season by season, feeding directly into how much they earn and how far they climb. The players get graded by wins, championships, and highlight reels. The referees get graded by a report that comes out the morning after, whether anyone remembers their name or not. The game isn't really the business for them. The grade is.